Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Pat Flynn Show. In this episode, we are going to talk about my new Fast 15 protocol. There's a lot of excitement in the Facebook group about this right now. We are about to do a beta run, a beta trial of this new protocol that I've designed, which combines the effectiveness of intermittent fasting and high-intensity kettlebell complexes to help people achieve faster, more sustainable fat loss, improved strength, muscle definition, mobility, flexibility. I think this is it. I think this is going to be the minimalist ultimate secret weapon against weakness. We are going to strengthen the flesh with Fast 15, and I want to talk about the ideas and the principles behind the protocol so you can understand what you will be getting yourself into, and also hopefully you'll leave this episode with some practical ideas that you could implement whether or not you want to take part in the official beta run of this program. And then at the end, I will talk more about the beta run for anybody who's interested in participating in the first official Fast 15 challenge. So, cool. Let's take a few steps back. Let's have a sip of delicious coffee. I have just black coffee in my little polar bear mug today. We switched from Fox mug to polar bear mug because it is about -6 with the wind chill in Wisconsin. So, hot coffee is sorely and desperately needed right now. That is so good. There's nothing quite like that first sip of coffee in the morning. So, Fast 15. Let's talk about it. What is this all about? Well, the name actually reveals a lot about the protocol. So, the protocol itself can be broken down into things that sort of revolve around the number 15. So, we have 15-hour fasts, we have 15-minute workouts or training sessions, and the protocol itself lasts for an initial 15 days. Now, you could follow the Fast 15, I think, indefinitely. I really do think this is a sustainable 90-year plan, but its initial 15-day commitment works as a wonderful metabolic reboot, just a way to sort of crank the metabolism, restore energy, just get things firing again, increase productivity, increase focus. And I think this is a great way not only to get started with intermittent fasting if you're new to it, but also a way to deepen your intermittent fasting practice. Now, it should be no surprise that I am a fan of fasting for many reasons. I think fasting can help us to gain better emotional control, to help us be comfortable with being uncomfortable. It helps us to develop intemperance, fortitude. So there's a lot of, I think, auxiliary benefits to fasting, aside from the obvious ones like improved health and weight loss. I think fasting, there's a reason that so many religions and spiritual traditions practice fasting in some sort. When engaged with the right mindset, it's such an awesome and powerful practice. Now, the problem is that people sometimes can go overboard, just like they do with exercise. So fasting is like exercise. It's a stress that, if it is applied in the right amounts, is a eustress. It can bring about many positive benefits. But like exercise, if you do too much too soon, or you're reckless, or you're foolish, or you're imprudent, it could become a distress, and it could become harmful. So the idea with Fast 15 is we're taking a minimalist perspective. What is the minimum effective dose? Keywords: minimum and effective, right? So being a minimalist doesn't mean that we don't get stuff done. It actually means we try to get as much done as efficiently as possible. So the idea of the 15-hour fast is this is a really good introduction to intermittent fasting for a couple of reasons. One is that most of the physiological benefits of fasting, we can reap most of those within the first 14 to 16 hours of fasting anyways. So there may be reasons to do extended periods of fasting, but the truth is we really experience a host of both physiological and I think psychological benefits as well within that first 14 to 16 hour fasting period. And the kind of cool, good thing about that is a large portion of that is just spent sleeping. So, you obviously want to set the right fasting window. So it's a very practical approach. And let me just say something about dieting in general, because this has been a pet peeve of mine. I've addressed this I actually just talked about it yesterday with Dan John, is people sometimes talk about dieting with no restrictions. Friends, that is a total myth. Whenever you hear that somebody is dieting or doing something without restrictions, I mean, like, what are they talking about? The whole idea of dieting implies restrictions, and restrictions are not a bad thing. That's something I want to get across. We need restrictions in life. Success in any area in life requires managing compromises. If we want to get something, we almost always have to give something up to get it. And oftentimes these restrictions are very healthy and productive. The problem is, of course, people can become obsessive. They can become unhealthy in their restrictions. And I am very much aware of that. And whenever I design my programs, I always keep that in mind, making sure, okay, are these restrictions that we're putting in place, are they practical? Are they sustainable? Are they effective? But you will never have success in anything, but especially when it comes to fitness, body composition, weight loss, if you do not have restrictions in place. So it's not a matter of how do I diet or how do I succeed without restrictions? The real question, the better question to ask is, what are the right restrictions? What are the restrictions that are going to get me from A to B, that are going to be practical, that are going to be sustainable, that can promote a healthy mind, a healthy body, help me to increase in temperance and fortitude and all these wonderful virtues? That's the right question. So restrictions are not a bad thing. Right? We all need restrictions to achieve some level of excellence, and we should want that. Right? That making that little sacrifice here, or perhaps even a large sacrifice for something that is better and more valuable in the future. I decide that I'm not going to spend hours every night watching mindless television with a tub of Ben & Jerry's because I want to have a good night's sleep. I want to be productive. I want to be healthy. I want to grow old. So I am setting restrictions in place. There always has to be restrictions. So that's relevant, but I just wanted to get that out there because you just see this all the time of this idea of, like, people will be like, since I switched to counting macros, I've finally been able to diet without restrictions. No, you haven't. You have not at all. You've just switched your restriction from counting calories to macros. That's still a restriction. So restrictions come in many forms. We can restrict quantity, we can restrict quality, so we can restrict in diet, we can restrict the amount we eat, we can do like portion control, or we can count calories. Or we could follow a certain macronutrient strategy, or we could restrict quality. People just take out certain foods from their diet. This is very common in many different protocols, whether it's keto, we're taking out carbohydrates, or if it's paleo, whatever. So that's a restriction. Or we can restrict the time in when we eat. We can just have periods when we eat and periods when we fast. Now, intermittent fasting obviously focuses on the when. We have certain restrictions in the day when we are engaged in a fast. And fast 15 focuses on a pretty strict fast. So we're not even doing controlled fasting or anything like that. It's water, coffee, tea, anything without calories is acceptable. And we're going to get a little bit hungry, and that's a good thing. We want that primal hunger. We want to increase, the benefit there is that it helps to increase metabolic flexibility, right? Our body really can adapt and become more efficient at tapping into different energy sources if we engage in intermittent fasting. It is a very healthy thing to do when it is properly understood and properly implemented. Now, of course, a lot of protocols feature a mix of restrictions. So Fast 15 for the first 15 days has other restrictions, right? We're going to be cutting down on other things that maybe we indulged in too much over the holiday season. So it's largely restrictions around the when of eating, but there are other restrictions that can help boost results along the way as well. And what's cool about the way I have this protocol set up is I actually have a couple different paths. I have a beginner path, I have an intermediate path, and I have an advanced path depending on how aggressive people want to be. And the beginner path, I'll just give you guys the highlights, is sort of the strict 15 hour fast, and then you just kind of resume eating quote unquote normally within certain frameworks of, what healthy clean eating should be, focusing on a certain amount of protein, vegetables, water, etc. The more advanced paths turn a strict fast into a controlled fast before you have your sort of primary meal at night. So a little bit more aggressive. And like I said, whether you're new to intermittent fasting, this is a way that you could deepen your practice. It's very similar to how I eat, and it's specifically what I'm using now. So I've got my coffee, I'm doing my strict fast, I'll have my workout, It'll then turn into a controlled fast, and I'll have my primary meal at night. And it feels great, super productive. Once you get used to fasting, one of the cool things that happens for most, I'm not going to say all, but a lot of people who really embrace the practice of fasting tend to feel really alive and alert when they are in that fasting phase. And you get to a point, kind of like I am now. If I had like a big breakfast, I would just want to take a nap. So you start to sort of that slightly hungry feeling. You kind of feel like you're on the hunt. Back in the olden days, right? You were hungry. You would have to go out and hunt your food. You would work for it. So you just kind of like slightly on edge. I love that feeling. Helps me focus. Helps me have great workouts. Helps me write. Helps me do these podcasts. So I think there really is. You do often have to get over an initial hump, right? So just like exercise, again, the analogies to exercise are really strong with fasting. In that if you haven't exercised for like 30 years and then you start, it's going to be difficult at first. It's going to be very uncomfortable. But then once you get into the routine of exercise, it then kind of sucks if you stop. It's the opposite. Well, same thing with fasting. Okay, there's that initial hurdle, and we should approach it reasonably to make sure we're challenged but successful. But once we're over that, it starts to just feel really good. Doesn't mean that there aren't challenging periods, just like even if you've been exercising for a long time, you still have challenging workouts. But it's incorporated. It's part of your habit now. It's part of your lifestyle. And you feel worse when you don't do it. That's the really interesting thing. I want to say the same thing is true with, coffee. Trying not to burp in the microphone. The same thing is true with intermittent fasting. Okay, so fast 15, at a minimum 15-hour fast, a minimum 15-minute training session. And believe me, these training sessions I have designed for this are kind of cruel. I'll admit there's some of my more devious kettlebell complex routines yet. But what's cool is throughout the 15 days is they vary in emphasis. So some are really focused on strength. Others are focused on what Dan John calls the heat ups. They're more metabolic conditioning. They're really like hard and sweaty routines. Like my Great Destroyer type of stuff, but all totally new, designed specifically for this protocol. And other routines are focused on mobility and recovery and more of those long, slow efforts as well. And then it's a 15-day sort of minimum commitment. And realistically, if you follow this protocol for 15 days and you do it as is, even on the beginner level, you could lose anywhere between 7 to 10 pounds, assuming, of course, you have that much to lose. That's always want to clarify that. And it's sustainable. That's the thing, is this is a way of approaching nutrition as a lifestyle. Yes, there are restrictions, but there's also flexibility in those. So even in Fast 15, we have a sort of cyclical intensity. So it's not super intense every single day. And I always like having one day per week. I don't like to call it a cheat day, because it isn't a cheat if it's built into the program, where you just ease restrictions. We just start to ease some of these restrictions. And we could ease all restrictions or some restrictions, and again, it depends on how aggressive you want to be. But it is both physiologically and psychologically useful to have at least one day per week where you really do ease restrictions, and you really enjoy yourself, and you have a well-deserved, mindful indulgence. And I strongly recommend you don't skip that. I know some people sometimes want to push through with protocols like, I don't need that day. I strongly recommend that you have a day where you ease restrictions. I really think it is incredibly helpful, even if you're feeling great. And it doesn't mean go binge and go crazy. Like, sure, you can go out and have some pizza and ice cream with the family or whatever you want. Or you could just eat more frequently or more of what you're already eating if you feel good. But it just really helps to have one day where the restrictions are peeled back or even drop away completely. Again, it helps with sustainability, on a physiological level, helps to kind of give a boost to certain hormones that we want to make sure. Because the truth is like the whole idea of quote-unquote starvation mode is largely a myth, but not entirely a myth, right? If we do keep trying to diet down in a straight line, as anybody knows, we will hit a wall. So the way around that is to have some type of cyclical intensity. We want to make sure that our nutritional lifestyle and our training routine has some type of periodization, that some days are more intense than others, some weeks, some months, maybe even some years are more intense than others. And it's that cyclical nature that helps us to progress without stalling out. It helps us to get over plateaus, and it makes it sustainable. So these are some of the basic principles. What I like to do, and what I recommend in at least 2 paths of Fast 15, is you fast right to the workout. So you will preferably engage your workout when fasted. Then you can have your first meal or post-workout shake to conclude the fast. That's optional. It's not mandatory to make this protocol work. I get it. People are busy. Not everybody has the ability to just work out anytime they want. So you can really kind of move the workout wherever you want. You can put it at the beginning of the day. You can put it at the end. You can do it at the end of your fast. There's flexibility there. But me personally, what I do is I work in the morning. I fast. I then go to the gym. I hit my training session, and then I end my fast after that, or I switch to a controlled fast until dinner. And is there a little something to be said about fasted exercise? Yeah. Is it magical? I don't think it's magical. Do I like it? Yeah, I like it. Like I said, I kind of feel alive and alert. I'm at this kind of odd place where if I have like a lot to eat before I go work out, it actually slows me down. I actually feel a little bit more tired. But again, so that's what I do, but there's ways that you can shift that workout and move it around to whatever is going to be most practical for you. The other thing I recommend in Fast 15, and something I might toy around with more in the later edition after the beta run is done, is having 15 minutes of quiet time per day, right? Something more on the spiritual side. Maybe that's prayer, meditation, or just like turning off the noise for 15 minutes, turning off the TV, turning off the noise, and doing some breathing exercises. And I'm going to have that option in the protocol. Again, not mandatory, but I think if you're going to add one more thing that you could make a 15-minute commitment to every single day, this is a really good one. 15 minutes of some type of where there's just no noise. Quiet time. We do this with our kids, actually. My wife does a nice job, because kids are crazy. They're always bouncing around. It's just like constantly upstairs. It's like a WWE match in my house. So every day there's 15 minutes where it's just quiet. It's just quiet. Maybe they read. Maybe they try and do some prayers or meditation. It's funny trying to watch little kids do that. But it's just 15 minutes of quiet. And how important that is for us as adults, too, where we are constantly bombarded with distractions and noise, and some of it might be good and healthy. Like, I would like to think that this podcast is really adding value to your life. Like, this is worth listening to. I really, really try to make sure anytime I open my fat mouth that I'm giving you something that's worthwhile. But there comes a point where it's just valuable not to have noise going all the time. So having 15 minutes a day, you have the 15-minute fast, you have the 15-minute training session, you have the 15 minutes of just quiet time to reflect, to breathe, to meditate, to pray. Many options of how you could spend that, but I really, really recommend that. And again, the nice thing about 15 minutes and thinking of minimum effective dose is, and I've talked about this before, this is one of the principles sort of supporting this program, is frequency and consistency are king. And intensity doesn't mean much if you're not consistent. So having that a sort of lower barrier to entry, okay, it's just a 15-minute workout. It's just a 15-hour fast. It's just 15 days. It's just 15 minutes of quiet time. It's not intimidating. It's not overwhelming. You can do this. You can do it. You can commit to it. You don't, even on the days you're tired, it's not an hour and a half training session. It's just this 15-minute routine. And then what happens is there's kind of this cool psychological trick, and this is something I do with myself all the time. When I don't feel like doing something, when I don't feel like writing or playing the guitar, what I'll do is like, okay, I don't feel like doing the full project I had in mind, but I'm going to go and just noodle around for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, something that I can absolutely do or commit to. And then once you get going, you typically feel pretty good. And then what started as 5 minutes turns into an hour and a half. Sometimes, and wow, I just had an amazing session. So sometimes you just have to lower the barrier to entry for yourself. And I have these sort of minimum effective dose parameters. But of course, you could add more to it. You could, if you feel, you're doing 15 minutes of quiet time, and next thing you know, you've done an hour of it. Awesome. That's great. You did more than the office space minimum with your flair. Awesome. Good for you. But hey, the minimum is actually acceptable with this program, and it's effective. I promise you, these 15 minutes of workouts are utterly effective. You're going to love them. So that's it. So whether you're interested in doing the beta program, which I'll talk about here in a minute, or if you just want to take some of these ideas and run with them, I would highly encourage it. 15-hour fast every day. So how does that work specifically? Well, you have a time when you stop eating at night, and then the clock ticks, right? And so 15 hours from whatever. So if you stop eating it at 8 p.m., that would be what? 11 a.m. is when you would, maybe have your training session and your fast. So you can, if you believe in math, you can figure that out. Is a pretty simple way to go about that. And you realize, oh, wow, that's not actually that extreme. No, it's not. You'll be a little bit hungry. You'll be challenged, but you will feel good. I promise you. Could you extend your fast? My answer to this is if you're doing the beta protocol, if you feel really good with a 15-hour fast, then just do the intermediate or more advanced path. I actually hesitate a little bit for people to begin with more than what's prescribed because you might feel great doing it the first 2 days, but it's a 15-day haul. So even if you feel like you can do more, I'd actually say maybe don't at first. Wait till you've done the protocol all the way through. And then when you go back, then, yeah, we can talk about extending your fast or switching to a controlled fast. So, and I get that a lot. People feel really great the first couple of days. They're like, hey, I feel awesome on this 15-hour fast. Could I go to a 16-hour fast or 18-hour fast? And you could, but I think what you realize is in many ways it might just be unnecessary. Like you'll just get fantastic results with what's already set out. So why overcook the chicken breast? Doesn't mean it's going to necessarily be any better. But just do the protocol as is first. And then after you've run it for a full 15 days, if you feel like, okay, yeah, I still want to take it to the next level, then do that. I think that's the more prudent way to go about it. 15-minute focused training session a day, some strength, some metabolic conditioning. I would say, 2 to 4 strength sessions, 1 to 2 metabolic conditioning, the rest mobility, recovery, and walking. If you can get the walking in, very good. You'll make Dan, John, and myself very happy. And then that 15 minutes of quiet time. And I would even recommend for that quiet time that you're not reading. I know people would want to read during that, but just just no distractions, right? Just being absolutely present, I think, is a practice. And then you can just read after. Have 15 minutes, that's another 15-minute thing you could do. 15 minutes of reading a day. Awesome. Add it. Anyway, don't want to pile too much on because we're trying to be minimalist here. So if you're interested in the full protocol, we're about to start registration for anybody who wants to take part in the beta program. All I ask is, so the beta program is discounted and you get some cool extra stuff for taking part. So that's kind of the incentive of being a podcast listener and email subscribers. You often get early access to these protocols I'm working on. The ask is that you follow the program exactly as is. Share your results at the end, and in exchange for that, you get early access and a pretty sweet discount. You'll get the full program, all written out. It's beautifully done. If you like the style of the Strong On programs, I actually have to thank my wife, Christine. She's the one that does all the sort of graphic design work. A lot of people ask me, this is kind of a hidden, sorry to get distracted, it's sort of a hidden business secret. You'll talk to people like, oh, how do you design your things so well? My advice is just get a really cool wife. Or sometimes I'll ask somebody, oh man, you have a great website, and she'll say, oh, my husband's a web designer. I'm like, oh, is that it? Yeah. So what's the lesson there? Don't marry for love. Just make sure they're useful. Kidding, of course, marry for love. Who cares if they can design website? Anyway, what am I talking about? Fast 15, yes. So beautiful program, straightforward, written out if you want everything just laid out for you in simple, easy to follow steps. Just do this, get results. Be one of the beta testers, please. We'd love to have you. And you can do that at chroniclesofstrength.com/fast15. That's chroniclesofstrength.com/fast15. By the time you hear this podcast, we should have that page open to register as a beta user. And it won't last long, so please hurry. If you want to take part in this, we're just doing registration for a few days, and then you'll get access to the program immediately, and then we'll be off and running. And it will be a sweet and fantastic 15 days, and I think you're going to get really impressive results and actually really enjoy this protocol. If not, I hope you've gotten practical, useful ideas from the episode that you can implement either way. So, yeah. Always good to talk to you. Always good to see you if you're on YouTube. So please help the podcast, like, comment, subscribe, leave those very nice, overly fawning reviews on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play. And if you want to take part in Fast 15, head over to chroniclesofstrength.com/fast15. Alrighty. Adios.